Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to take a few minutes to let people join, but in the meantime, please use the chat to introduce yourself and let us know where you're joining us from today. All righty, we're going to go ahead and get started. Uh, Thank you, everybody, so much for joining this GeoFuture Initiative webinar, the first in our series, titled National Geothermal Strategies, Technical Assistance, and Industry Perspectives on Next Generation Geothermal. It's going to be a content-rich, highly informative, dynamic webinar. Really looking forward to our discussion. Um, Sophie, did you want to share the housekeeping slide?
Sure, I'm happy to. Today's webinar
Oh,
will be,
I meant the slide isn't showing. It's on the screen.
are you seeing it now?
I'm seeing it, so I think it is showing. Maybe
Oh, all right. I'm just not seeing it. No, no worries then. Um, So before we get started, we have a few housekeeping notes. The webinar is being recorded and it will be shared with attendees. You will automatically be muted upon joining and throughout the webinar, but you may use the chat feature to add comments and share input, and the Q&A function in your toolbar to ask questions. And we do encourage questions and comments, so please you consider using both. For those of you who would like captions in your preferred language, you can enable the caption translation feature, selecting both your preferred speaking and caption languages. And if you have any technical issues, please use the chat feature to message Sophie Schrader. You can adjust your audio through your audio settings. And if you're having issues, you can also dial in and listen by phone, and dial-in information can be found in your registration email. And finally, we'll be launching a survey when the event ends. Your feedback is highly valuable to us, so please fill it out at the end of the webinar. So for our session today, we will start with opening remarks from the SEM Secretariat, followed by a brief introduction to the GeoFuture Initiative. We will then hear national perspectives on geothermal strategies with an emphasis on next generation geothermal, starting with the U.S. National Geothermal Strategy from DOE's Geothermal Office. Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry will then share their national geothermal strategy. Next, we will hear from Kenya's Geothermal Development Company on their national geothermal strategy. And finally, we'll hear a non-government perspective on national geothermal strategies from the International Geothermal Association. And at the end, we'll have a moderated Q&A with all of our speakers, followed by closing remarks. And we're honored to welcome an outstanding group of speakers joining us from around the world today. including Jean-Francois Gagné, head of the SEM Secretariat, Sean Porce, acting director of the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Geothermal, Haruki Yada, deputy director of Geothermal Resource Development Office in Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, Dr. George Muya, the General Manager for Business Development and Acting General Manager for Strategy and Planning of Kenya's Geothermal Development Company, and Dr. Marit Brahmer, CEO of the International Geothermal Association. And I'm Ron Benioff, the serve as International Program Manager at the National Lab of the Rockies. We're the operating agent for the GeoFutures Initiative, and I'm honored to be your moderator today. Um, with that, I'm happy to hand it over to Jean-Francois Gagné for a few opening remarks. Jean-Francois is head of the Clean Energy Ministerial Secretariat, supporting international collaboration to promote policies and programs that advance global energy technologies and to share lessons learned and best practices around the world. Jean-Francois has more than 25 years of experience across transportation, energy, and environmental sectors. And thank you, as always, Jean-Francois, for your leadership on advanced geothermal and advanced energy technologies globally.
Thank you, Ron, and it's a great honor to be here. In fact, very, very proud to be opening the first webinar of the GeoFutures Initiative. This new SEM initiative was very proudly launched during our 16th Clean Energy Ministerial meeting in Busan last year. And we, of course, want to thank the great leadership of the United States, Japan, and Saudi Arabia as co-leads of the initiative, and express our appreciation to the National Lab of the Rockies for the great support in coordinating the initiative and also to organize this great webinar. In fact, this webinar really is a key part of the GeoFuture Initiative's work plan, with its objective of driving next generation geothermal development deployment worldwide. We know that there are huge new opportunities that new technologies in geothermal are opening worldwide. In fact, the International Energy Agency flagged that there's over 800 gigawatts of potential by 2050 that could be unlocked by the latest set of next generation technologies for geothermal. And so the work plan, with its 4 pillars of providing analysis, training, and knowledge sharing, public-private dialogues, and political momentum to actually achieve that deployment, is really, really valuable. And today, this really fits well into that program. We really are very keen to hear what stakeholders will have to say today. We're very grateful for the great turnout. We're also very grateful for the great speakers that we have today that show a good representation from both governments and industry, and great geographical representation from the US, Japan, Kenya, and the International Geothermal Association. And we really think that this is a great first step in terms of being able to share knowledge and best practices to expand on the opportunities that exist worldwide. We hope that today will be the first steps in terms of how we can learn about how new technologies are opening new opportunities, but also to share how to reduce the barriers, especially on the financing side, by creating enabling environments, whether they're throughout, proper regulatory frameworks, exchange of data and information, and being able to advance new innovative solutions worldwide. And we think that the GeoFutures Initiative is actually really filling a key role, and the SEM is extremely proud to support this new initiative. And we look very much forward to the outcomes of today's discussions, and to be able to bring these outcomes to this year's Clean Energy Ministerial that will take place in Saudi Arabia in October of this year, where we hope for it to be another great moment to be able to advance new geothermal technologies and the momentum and create the momentum to open their possibilities. So with that, Ron, very happy to be here, very happy to see how this is kicking off very, very well for the initiative. And we look forward to continued support and to be able to take the outcomes to the next level. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, JF, and thank you again for your leadership. And we're really excited for the potential of working together in advancing next generation geothermal technologies. So now I'll take a few minutes to introduce the GeoFuture Initiative for those who may not be familiar with it. The GeoFuture Initiative was launched at SEM16 by the United States, Japan, and Saudi Arabia to accelerate geothermal development and deployment through international collaboration, with an estimated 800 gigawatts of global market potential for next generation geothermal by 2050. The initiative has also been in discussion with several potential new members and observers, including Canada, the UK, European Commission, Indonesia, Kenya, the Netherlands, among others, and we're really excited to broaden participation and engagement in the initiative. Um, the initiative works to raise ambition through collaboration, unlocking investment and deployment, and building knowledge and capacity by addressing member priorities such as financing, regulatory frameworks, data quality and availability, development concerns, and investment readiness. And it's a very robust set of activities that we're addressing in the initiative through our partnership. And if you go to the next slide, the initiative is delivering support through a set of activities. We have a series of case studies that will be completed next month, and we're excited to release and launch at SEM17 in Riyadh in mid-October of this year. The initiative is also launching an industry advisory group that will provide advice and dialogue and help highlight solutions to barriers to next generation geothermal development. We have a program of technical assistance and knowledge sharing, of which this webinar is a key element of our activities, and of course, outreach and membership growth, seeking to raise the profile and knowledge and awareness of next generation geothermal. And I should note, as part of the technical assistance, we also have some resources to provide support to countries. So please let us know of opportunities that you're aware of to partner with countries. On the next slide, we wanted to give you a little bit of a sneak peek of what you can expect to see in the case study series, which we will be releasing, as I noted, at SEM17 in October. We're covering 13 case studies that represent 4 technologies and 11 countries, and it's a deeper look at real-world examples of the development pathways, of the market conditions, the challenges and lessons from next generation geothermal projects around the world, and with summaries of the most important takeaways and implications for all of us around the world as we look to scale up the really tremendous potential for next generation technologies. And on the next slide, we wanted to just highlight that this is just the first of the webinar series, which will include 5 webinars in total, focused on how geothermal can support national energy planning, workforce transition. We'll get into the more of the technology on next generation geothermal systems, and subsurface exploration. And we hope you can join us for the full series of webinars, and we'll be sharing more information on the upcoming webinars, and really appreciate your joining us here today. So with that brief intro, let's get started. And a reminder, please offer comments by chat or any questions you have using the Q&A function. So our first country speaker today is Sean Porce of the U.S. Department of Energy's Geothermal Office. Sean serves as acting director of that office. Sean is also the program manager for commercial scale-up within the Department of Energy's Office of Geothermal. Sean leads the office's efforts in permitting, data innovation and modeling, and grid valuation, markets, and offtake. Prior to his current role, Sean led the office's data modeling and analysis program. He previously served as a special assistant at the White House's Office of Management and Budget, was a research scientist at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and a policy and regulatory specialist within the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And thank you, Sean, for your really robust and deep leadership of geothermal energy. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ron, and really appreciate everybody being here. This is a very exciting webinar to be a part of. Really happy to be the first to go here, and really excited to tell you about all the progress we're making in the United States with respect to geothermal. Also want to do a quick shout out to Tim Steves on our team here in the Office of Geothermal. He's our international lead and has been doing yeoman's work building the platform of interest with our office, with our other colleagues across the department and here globally too. So very excited to see this partnership move forward. Next slide, please. So our office, for those not in the U.S. government focus areas, we've moved from our prior focuses within the renewable energy portions of the department to now we are now part of the hydrocarbons and geothermal energy office. Besides our name being in the bright lights, which is always very exciting, that means we're now co-located with the other subsurface energy technologies, be it oil and gas, coal, as well as others. And that's been a really it's been a great shift for us, to be honest. And we've been very excited to see leadership buy-in and interest was burgeoning before. It remains and is exploding now, I would say, in terms of what people think of geothermal, the impact it can make here in the United States, as well as globally. So our strategic goals and missions, despite that reorganization, remain largely the same. We're very, very focused on gigawatt scale geothermal energy power. We want to position geothermal as a competitive domestic source for reliable baseload electricity generation. And we have four major objectives to get that done. One, we need to better explore for and develop and characterize these potential resources. The second being enabling the technologies that will lower the both costs and amount of time it takes to access reservoirs of interest, be it next gen or conventional. We're also very interested in, and this is new for us, revitalizing the more than 4 gigawatts of geothermal power that's already online. We're looking at ways to upgrade existing facilities as well as update with new technologies and improve those operational efficiencies. And then finally, throughout energy storage, the subsurface is a wonderful storage medium. And so we're very excited to think about that from a long duration energy storage standpoint. And then, of course, Ron mentioned the grid valuation work that I lead here in the office. We know there's an energy-only firm baseload power opportunity, and there are large industrial users here in the United States and globally that see that value. But we know it can also offer a multifaceted approach to the grid, so we're excited to explore that more. Next slide, please. So we do this work across 3 major programs. I'm actually going to start from right to left because I'll explain why. Commercial scale, the program I run on my day-to-day basis, I see us as the enabling factors to help see around the corner for the rest of our office to make those bigger dollar investments, be it pilots, be it demos, be it core research and development approaches. So we run all of the techno-economics, the performance assessment work, the permitting work that's very, very important for us to be considering here in the US as it is abroad. And really, when we package those insights, we don't do that analysis for analysis sake. We want it to bridge to a strategy that leads to insight into how to develop technology R&D across drilling, across stimulation, across exploration tools, hotter, faster, better, deeper, and stronger. That's generally the tenets we're looking for in our technology and R&D pillar. And then finally, once we have done that testing, once we've done the bench scale testing, the modeling, the analysis work, really what we are now more recently have been empowered to do is bring that full-fledged out to the pilots and demo space, out into the field. So hopefully most of you are aware of the Frontier Observatory for Research in Geothermal Energy, the FORGE project. That is our flagship. We also know that is very much a global standard for next generation test sites when it comes to geothermal. We are very excited to be accelerating more and more of those types of demos, bringing more of our work out of the laboratories and into the field to test that will then provide a positive feedback loop and a learning by doing uptick and learning by doing rates that basically brings more megawatts and ultimately gigawatts online here in the United States. So we're very laser focused. There's a very tactical way we go about the work we do here, and it's a great team we all work with here in the office. Next slide, please. So I mentioned Forge on the prior slide. That is our dedicated underground field lab for developing, testing, and accelerating breakthroughs in EGS. For the past 5 years, we have been doing a number of first of a kinds there. First, to be drilling at a high angle directional angle within granite rock. We've done it faster than anybody else did at the time. We have improved through learning by doing with collaborations in the oil and gas industry as well as oil and gas academics, and have really shown how we can bring forward the great knowledge that the geothermal drilling industry already has, as well as integrate that with what we knew has really unlocked the shale revolution here in the United States. But Forge is not our only demo site. We have a number of pilot field tests ongoing right now, including one we were excited to announce in the Eastern United States in Pennsylvania earlier this year. But I would be remiss to not talk about, of course, our very exciting NOFO that we have on the streets, $171.5 million for both field scale testing of EGS demo sites, as well as confirmation drilling and exploration activities. This gets at the full suite of electron development opportunities for geothermal in the United States. It really tackles that lowering risk and learning by doing rates we need in more lithologies and basins for EGS technologies. It also unlocks the earlier life cycle development opportunities to explore, develop, and confirm the resources that can then be leased, can then be brought to private industry here in the United States. We see this NOFO as really tackling the full life cycle, and that's been very, very exciting to see. And we look forward to making those announcements for that NOFO here in the coming weeks and months. Next slide, please. But again, we have a lot else going on in the program, and to the point of accelerating to commercialization and markets. We're also thinking about how we can build out capabilities at the U.S. state level. Some states are ready to move regulatory policy-wise and have those well-formed structures to permit and develop geothermal resources in their states. Others do not and want to have an opportunity for technical assistance from labs like the National Lab of the Rockies, as well as others, to help accelerate their learning curve there. And that's what the Geothermal Power Accelerator, the top one there, is really accomplishing. We're partnering with the National Association for State Energy Officials, NASIO, as well as a number of national laboratories, including NLR, to really pull forward those that are ready to move and bring along those that are excited to move forward as well. So really across that 14 to 15 state partnership, we are seeing a lot of work unfold. We have a lot of technical assistance opportunities across permitting, across data, across stakeholder engagement and community buy-in that we're very much looking forward to diving in on. I would also talk about, of course, from the R&D standpoint, we have been doing a lot of work in the drilling space, be it drilling within some of the deepest basins we've done so for U.S. geothermal wells, greater than 20,000 feet in depth. We've also been able to do that faster and better and stronger than we have previously before. So really what this means is we are hitting on all cylinders, attacking this opportunity from the market side, from the utility spectrum side, as well as from the R&D and hard tech side, to make the U.S. geothermal industry both a global leader in the space, of course, but then also developing these domestic resources for all of the critical infrastructure needs we have here in the United States. And then finally, bringing this to market, we're working hand in hand with regional partners and utilities to incorporate geothermal assumptions into their long-term planning processes. We do not want those assumptions on the cutting room floor anymore. There are a number of states that already have well-formed ideas about geothermal, but building out that market potential, it matters a lot where utilities and utility planning commissions think about different generation technologies. So we don't want to have to be in the room for every one of these conversations. We're in fact incorporating them into the models that these platforms are using. So we're very excited to see that grid work move forward as well. Next slide, please. I'd be remiss not to also mention permitting. So up until a couple years ago, it took about 7 to 10 years to develop a geothermal power plant on public lands here in the United States. Fortunately for us, we have burgeoning policy and regulatory solutions such as categorical exclusions that are lowering that time from that ceiling. So it's probably more like 7 to 8 years at this point, as far as the extent. However, we are really tackling this on all fronts in order to lower the time frame, and really, I like to say, right-sizing the risk register associated with geothermal. We're doing that in partnership with a number of laboratories, with our DOE colleagues in the Office of Policy, the Bureau of Land Management, the White House, as well as with states to accelerate tools, techniques, and approaches that give stakeholders, give practitioners the information that they need to accelerate their decision making here and ensure that there's a proper stewardship for the work, but also an accelerated focus on how to bring these electrons online as quickly as possible while balancing that stewardship. So it's a lot of work we're doing. You see all the colors on the screen here for the number of stakeholders we have to lead and work with, but we're very excited to be continuing to convene and be the authority in that space as far as where we can bring innovation forward. Next slide, please. And of course, we have the geothermal data repository. This is a publicly available data platform that every single Office of Geothermal funded project has to submit their data to and has done so since 2010. And at this point, we have over and almost 800 terabytes of data. We have forge data, for example, that's downloaded upwards of 1 million times a month, whether it be their stimulation data or their seismic and monitoring campaign data. These are becoming benchmark tools and data sets that commercial developers require, states need, researchers are using to help advance the science in the space. And we want to make this platform, the GDR, as freely accessible as possible. So we're looking as well, expanding beyond the Office of Geothermal's data to incorporate well-versed and well-coordinated opportunities with states, with developers, with others who want to come along with that data sharing partnership with us. But in addition to data, we are also doing a lot of work to raise the awareness and understanding of geothermal energy here in the United States. I mentioned NASIO, the state level coordination work we do. We are raising the bar of awareness at states who are excited to dive in here with us. But we also have a multimodal way that we get the word out. So you probably have seen our drill down newsletter, but we also have sites such as GeoBridge, of course, our own website, but we have story maps, fact sheets, success stories. If you've been to a conference and you've seen our wonderful stickers, please stop by our booth if you're at Geothermal Rising here next month. We'll have some stickers, I'm sure, available for you to take on. Ultimately, though, again, going back to the multimodal approach, we are looking at this from a social license to operate opportunity, but also a developing the next generation workforce to build out the pipeline of geothermal developers here in the United States and abroad. Next slide, please. All right. I think if we have 1 minute, I would like to cover this slide because of the storage angle. So one thing that we are really, really interested in, I mentioned long duration energy storage, and I mentioned that the subsurface is a wonderful insulator of energy, be it hot or be it cold. The advent of data centers and critical AI infrastructure development here in the United States requires large amounts of electricity to handle their cooling loads. Well, instead of thinking of that as a peaking demand need from an electricity grid standpoint, you can in fact think of this as an energy arbitrage opportunity. You could run a chiller with cheap energy in the spring when it is cheap to procure, and you can run that chiller, cool down water, and store it directly below the footprint of a data center or a critical piece of industrial infrastructure that then can be used for direct cooling under times in which it is most grid stressed to otherwise take that electricity and use in, say, August in Texas. So we're thinking about this really critically with a great consortium of national laboratories, the University of Chicago, Princeton, as well as others. And we're really looking forward to bringing this insight of cold underground thermal energy storage out to the field, ideally at scales that matter for utility scale developers of data centers. So look for more information on this here in the coming weeks and months. We're excited to continue to explore the space and happy to share the results of this work at a later date and time. With that, Ron, maybe I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sean, and really appreciate the overview that you provided that highlights the very holistic approach that the department is taking towards geothermal R&D, commercial scale-up, pilot projects, permitting, workforce development, and as you just noted, the tremendous opportunity now for cold underground storage. So our next speaker, really excited to now hear from Haruki Yada, who's the Deputy Director of the Geothermal Resource Development Office at the Agency for Natural Resources and Energy in Japan. Since joining the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry in 2022, she's worked mainly on energy policies. Haruki Yada has assumed her current position in July 2026 and is responsible for geothermal energy policy and development. And over to you, Haruki.
Thank you. My name is Haruki Yada from the Agency for Natural Resources and Energy, METI, in Japan. Today, I'd like to introduce Japanese geothermal policy and our recent initiatives on next-generation geothermal technologies. Next slide, please. My presentation consists of two parts. First, I will briefly introduce the current status of geothermal energy in Japan. Then I will introduce our strategy for next generation geothermal. Next slide, please. Geothermal energy is becoming increasingly important in Japan, as electricity demand is expected to increase due to data centers and other facilities. Geothermal energy is attracting attention as a reliable and baseload power source is. Japan has the world's third largest geothermal energy potential, estimated at approximately 23.4 gigawatts. However, the current installed capacity remains about 0.6 gigawatts, representing only around 0.3% of the electricity mix. Under the government's outlook, geothermal energy is expected to account for between 1 and 2% of electricity generation by 2040. Next slide, please. Japanese geothermal development has experienced several phases. Following the oil crisis, government-led exploration helped drive development. Later, geothermal growth slowed due to competition from nuclear and thermal power, as well as regulatory constraints and development risks. Today, geothermal has regained attention, and Japan has entered a new promotion phase focusing on both conventional and next-generation geothermal. Next slide, please. Developing geothermal projects requires substantial investment and involves long lead times. To address these challenges, METI and JOGMEC provide support throughout the entire project lifecycle. This includes resource surveys, exploration fundings, equity participations, liability guarantees, R&D, community engagement, and the feed-in tariff and premiums. Particularly in Japan, cooperation with local communities and hot spring operators is essential for successful geothermal development. Next slide, please. Now, I'd like to move the second part of my presentation, next generation geothermal technologies. One of the main reasons Japan is focusing on next generation geothermal is its enormous resource potential. Conventional geothermal resources are estimated at approximately 23.45 gigawatts. However, when closed-loop systems, EGS, and supercritical geothermal are included, the potential exceeds 77 gigawatts. In other words, next-generation geothermal could expand Japanese exploitable geothermal potential to more than 4 times the current level. This estimate only considers power generation. If future feed utilization is included, the potential may be even larger. Next slide, please. Next generation geothermal technologies may also help address several fundamental challenges associated with conventional geothermal. For example, development may become possible wherever sufficient heat exists, reducing the resource risk and improving drilling success rates. Development may expand beyond mountainous volcanic regions, reducing geographical constraints and regulatory risks. These technologies also have the potential to reduce the drilling costs, shorten development timelines, and improve project economies. For Japan, next generation geothermal is therefore not only new technology. It is a key strategy for dramatically expanding geothermal deployment in Japan. Next slide, please. In Japan, the seventh strategic energy plan, next generation geothermal technologies were recognized as a key option for expanding geothermal development. The plan specifically calls for accelerated demonstrations, early commercialization, and the formulation of concrete deployment targets toward 2040. To support this effort, WMIT established a public-private council on next-generation geothermal systems. The council includes government officials, researchers, and private sector stakeholders. We have already held multiple meetings to discuss commercialization pathways, policy frameworks, and deployment strategies. The objective is to move beyond R&D and prepare for large-scale practical deployment. Next slide, please. Based on these discussions, Japan has developed a deployment roadmap. The roadmap consists of three phases. Phase 1 focuses on the introduction by around 2030. Phase 2 aims for the commencement of operations for early 2030s. Phase 3 focuses on large-scale deployment and major expansion of installed capacity. Under this roadmap, Japan aims to reach approximately 1.4 gigawatts of geothermal capacity by 2040 and approximately 77 gigawatts by 2050. Next slide, please. To accelerate commercialization, Japan recently established a large-scale project under the Green Innovation Fund. The project was formally approved in last year and this year and has a total budget of approximately 143 billion yen. Government support is capped at approximately 110 billion yen, or roughly 690 million US dollars. The project covers four major technology areas: supercritical, closed loop, enhanced geothermal, and enabling technologies. We are currently preparing the call for proposals for demonstration projects, which is scheduled to open soon. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your attention. Japan believes that next generation geothermal technologies can significantly expand geothermal deployment, strengthen energy security, and contribute to both domestically and globally. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Haruki. Very exciting and inspiring to hear about the comprehensive approach that Japan is taking in addressing the many risks and opportunities for next generation geothermal development with a holistic set of research and market solutions and that visionary roadmap. We look forward to continuing to learn from your experiences. Our next speaker is Dr. George Muya. Dr. Muya is General Manager for Business Development and the Acting General Manager for Strategy and Planning at Kenya's Geothermal Development Company, or GDC. He's a professional geologist with more than 15 years of experience in the energy sector And at GDC, he brings a strong combination of technical, strategic, and project development experience to advancing Kenya's geothermal resources.
All right. Thank you very much, Ron. My name, like you've said, is George Muya. I'm joining you from East Africa, Kenya. And I will take you through a presentation that is really talking about our national geothermal strategy, which is still in draft form, but I will present this to you from a GDC perspective. So maybe just to start off with setting the, putting everything in what do you call it? Setting the scene, Kenya has an installed capacity of about 3,840 megawatts. And of this, about 3,000 megawatts is effective interconnected. In August, we had a peak demand of about 2,549. So that really represents the supply side of, the demand side rather, of electricity here in Kenya. The supply side looks quite good from a renewable energy perspective. 92% of our grid is supplied from renewables, and geothermal actually constitutes the bulk of that at about, so there's a small typo here. This is about 26% of Kenya's total installed capacity. However, we do generate as geothermal 40% of the total energy that is generated in the country. Maybe just to also give a little bit of perspective in terms of how the energy sector is structured. We have the Ministry of Energy at the very top, and of course here what we do is what is done is that there is a policy setting and also regulation development. Then we have the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority. So this is our energy regulator. And below that, we have the two arms of the energy sector. We have the transmission and distribution line. And there we have the main transmitter, that is KETRACO. KETRACO, basically that means the Kenya Electricity Transmission Company. We also have the Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Company, that is REREC. So this entity is really geared towards ensuring that electricity reaches all of the rural parts of our country, Kenya. Then we have a KPLC. KPLC is the main off-taker of electricity in Kenya. The other arm is the generation arm, and there we have NUPEA. NUPEA is the Nuclear Power and Energy Agency. So we do have an entity that is looking at developing nuclear power here in Kenya. We also have KenGen. KenGen is the main electricity generator in Kenya. They also operate the Olkaria geothermal field. In subsequent slides, I will show you a map of Kenya, and I will be able to point out where these geothermal fields are. And of course, GDC, this is a company that I work for, and we have one goal at GDC, and that is the development of geothermal resources. And of course, I'll be speaking in subsequent slides from the GDC perspective and how we are contributing to the national geothermal strategy. And of course, finally, we do have the IPPs, and what that means is that these are independent power producers. So I will also talk about how GDC is facilitating the private sector to enter into the geothermal space. Yeah, so our national geothermal strategy, like I said, is still in draft form and is based on a number of legislation. So on the right side of this slide, you'll see the different legislation that which we refer to. Probably here, what I would like to just point out is the second entry, which is Kenya Vision 2030 and the Beta Agenda. So this is really referring to the National Economic Blueprint agenda. So every 5 years, we as a country, we look at how we can fast track economic development. Of course, energy is a key contributor to this. So we are always going to be updating every 5 years. And so this national geothermal strategy is very much aligned to these updates in terms of how we are going to be fast-tracking development of our economy. So the National Geothermal Strategy is focused on 4 main areas, and the first is to accelerate exploitation of geothermal resources. So while we have made quite good advances in geothermal development, what this strategy is looking at is how else can we develop these geothermal resources other than just focusing on the conventional kind of development. So this is looking at some of the points like the enhanced geothermal systems and similar approaches. The other goal of this strategy is to enhance the financial resourcing for geothermal resource development. I'll talk about how we are looking at this goal from a GDC perspective in subsequent slides. And then, of course, we're also looking at how we can strengthen geothermal development in the region by exporting some of the expertise that we have here in Kenya, while at the same time enhancing local engagement in geothermal development in our country. Okay. So I will now then do a little bit of a transition and speak from a GDC perspective. This is the company that has employed me and also is the anchor of my presentation. So GDC was formed in 2008 and with the sole objective of which was to fast track geothermal development. And how we do that is that we take up those upfront risks that are associated with geothermal development. As you are aware, geothermal development is actually quite capital intensive. And so what we do is that we focus, sorry, I'm having a little bit of a technical issue here. Yes, so we focus our energies in the most risky parts of geothermal development. So what this slide shows, and I'm sure many of you have seen this picture before, is how is a juxtapositioning of the risk on one end with regard to geothermal development on the other side. So essentially, as you continue to mature a geothermal development, the risk of that project continues to progressively diminish. So what GDC does essentially is to take up this upfront risk. So we do the surface exploration, so the GNG, the geology, geophysics, and geochemistry. We also do the initial exploration drilling. We also do the appraisal drilling. We come up with the feasibility studies and production drilling. So by the time we are through with this kind of approach, we are able to now then invite the private sector to an almost risk-free venture. So this is an approach that we have seen is really helping in fast-tracking the development of the geothermal resources in Kenya. I will just very quickly go to this slide. And essentially what I want to present to you here is that in Kenya, we have about 14 high enthalpy geothermal sites. GDC is operating 5 of these sites, and we have deployed the business model that I've just described, where we do the surface exploration all the way up to steam gathering system. And I just also want to show you how this model has impacted development in Kenya. So this is a Menengai geothermal field. It is the most advanced in terms of development, the most advanced field under GDC's operation. In this field, we have 3 IPPs, that is Sosian, Globlek, and Orpower or Kaishan. And they were engaged about in 2013 on a build, own, and operate framework. And through this business model that I've been able to describe to you, we are able to now say that all of the 3 IPPs are at a point where they have their plants that There are plants which are fully commissioned and operational, save for Globelec, which is in the final stage of commissioning. This slide is just basically to show what it is that I've said before. We undertake the drilling in the field. We also do the well testing. We have put a steam gathering system in place, which is now connecting all of the production wells. At that point, we are able to now then invite the IPP, whose only role is to put up the power plant in a risk-free development. Of course, we also have Ketraco that provides the evacuation route for the power. So why I'm showing you these slides and why I'm talking about what we've done in Menengai is just to highlight to you that the taking up of these upfront costs really supports in fast-tracking geothermal development. And where there are other countries that are looking to move in this direction, this would probably be a business model that could make sense in terms of development. These are just slides. I think they are quite heavy slides, so that makes the transition a little bit slow. So this is a Sosiana geothermal power plant, which is already commissioned and is in operation. This is the ORPA 22 or the Kaishan power plant, which is also in operation. And the final is a Globelec. So this is a conventional geothermal power plant, and it's also in the final stage of commissioning. Like I said, GDC operates 5 different concessions. I will not go into all of the different five projects, but I think it's important to just show a replica of that same business model. In the Baringo Silali geothermal project, we are looking to bring online 3 different concessions. So that is the Paka, Korosi, and Silali, a total of 300 megawatts. Where we are with regard to that project is that we have done all the activities from the surface, the G&G work. We've gotten the EIA licenses, done all of the activities, and most recently we concluded the feasibility study that more or less puts in place the parameters of how to develop that field. We want to develop in a stepwise manner, and I think in the next couple of months we'll be moving to the point where we are now inviting IPPs to tender to develop the power plant. I only show this slide because it is similar to what we've done in Menengai, and I think it is important to show you the timelines from around 2012 to about to now. What we have been doing is we have been doing the infrastructural development and drilling of about 27 wells. That might seem to be a long time, but if you look at this slide, from 2018 is when we started drilling our wells. So that is eight years to date. And I think if you juxtapose that to other geothermal developments, worldwide, I think you might see that there has been a little bit of fast tracking there. We've moved a little bit fast, and I think that is really based on the approach that we are using as GDC in terms of our business model. I will, maybe because of time, I will not go into the other projects. Maybe this is the Suswa project, and this is the final project I wanted to share with you. We are at the very early stages of developing this field. We've put the infrastructure in place, the road there, network that you can see. We've drilled a number of drill pads. We've identified the water source and put up the camp layout. Essentially, what we want to do in Suswa is a little bit different from what we have done in Menengai. We are looking to engage a strategic partner to work with us a little bit earlier in field development, so that we are not only talking about the private sector coming in to put up a power plant. We believe that we are also able to work with the private sector in certain aspects of field development. So this is a little bit of a deviation from what we have been doing before. And I think maybe in the last slide, I will show you how this touches on the national geothermal strategy. We are able to do these activities in Kenya here based on some of the investments that we have made. We have invested heavily on our staff. We have highly trained geologists, geophysicists, and scientists in earth sciences. We also have very highly trained reservoir engineers, and that is what I call the software side. In terms of hardware, we also have this high capacity drilling rigs. We have 7 of them, and all of the associated infrastructure that goes to drilling and also to field assessments. I think this is a really critical thing, a critical ingredient in terms of geothermal, fast-tracking geothermal development in a country. And so this is what we have, as a country, really worked on to develop. These are just pictures of some of our facilities. Allow me not to talk about our consultancy services because this is something that, because of the expertise that we have built, we are now able to lease out to others who require the same expertise. What I want to
George,
also talk.
we'll only have about 1 minute for you to wrap up here.
Yes, I will. I only have, I think, 2 slides. Yeah. Now, what I want to talk about here is about our direct use applications at GDC, and also in line with our national geothermal strategy. Aside from power generation, we are also really focused on direct use applications. We have a number of demonstration projects. So we have a grain dryer, a milk pasteurizer, greenhouse. But these demonstration centers have actually been very successful in terms of attracting investment. So recently we signed a contract with an industrial player who's in the cement sector, and they are looking to generate about 4 to 5 megawatts from the steam, but more importantly, use the brine directly to dry cement components. So I think this is an important thing in terms of national geothermal strategy, because we are not only focused on the power side, but we're also looking at direct use application. Maybe just one last thing is that one of our mandates is to also build the capacity in the region. So what we do is, aside from outright training, we also have a tripartite arrangement with one of our sister companies called Kengen and Grow GTP. And what we do here is we have every year we have 3-week training courses where we invite students or trainees from all over Africa to come and participate in the full value chain of geothermal development. Each cohort has approximately about 30 trainees. And once we are through with the training, the top 2 or 3 trainees have an opportunity to go to Iceland for further studies, to build their competence in geothermal development. We have done this for about 9 years now, and we have trained about 300 geothermists from different African countries. I think it's important to just say that in terms of we're not just focused on power generation or direct use, but also lifting or building capacity within the region. This is my last slide. And as we are developing the geothermal resources in Kenya, we also are cognizant of the fact that there are some areas where we don't have the conventional geothermal resource. Some parts in the southern part of Kenya towards the coast, towards some parts of central Kenya, Nyambene Hills. So these are the areas where we are looking to deploy or considering considering the application of this next generation technologies. These are some points that we have discussed probably at more advanced levels, and hopefully in the near future we'll be able to announce how we are going to be deploying these technologies in those areas. Maybe, Ron, if you allow me one last slide. This is the last one. I just wanted to tie everything to what I've said. I'm sorry. Yes. So when I started off, I talked about the national geothermal strategy. I talked about the four goals that we have, and I just wanted to show how GDC has contributed to this. With regard to accelerating the geothermal resources, we're having this multi-concessional development. I talked about the different fields that we are doing and in parallel. So this is our way of fast-tracking geothermal development. We are also sustaining our de-risking function. Like I said, we are focusing on that first part of geothermal development where there's a lot of risk associated. And by addressing this part, we are now able to bring in whether it is private investment or whether our sister companies, Kengen, are able to join. In terms of expanding our operational footprint, we are doing a lot of consultancies in the region. We just came from Rwanda. We are moving to Ethiopia. And what we want to do is we want to export those expertise that we have built within GDC to the rest of the region. I think, Ron, I will leave it there because I can see you've given me the signal that I have to end. So allow me to thank you for listening to me. Thank you, and back to you, Ron.
Thank you, George. No, we could happily listen to you for another half an hour and continue to learn from the amazing lessons and experiences of GDC. So thank you for that presentation. And I think, as you noted, GDC really is a model that we all can learn from in terms of your approach of dealing with the upfront risks and costs and enabling geothermal development to thrive. There are a couple, you may want to look at the chat and maybe also the Q&A. There's a couple questions for you, and I encourage all the speakers to look at the chat and Q&A and respond to those questions. So our final speaker is Dr. Marit Brommer. Dr. Brommer is CEO of the International Geothermal Association, representing the global geothermal community across industry, governments, academia, and international organizations. With more than 18 years of experience in geothermal energy and subsurface energy systems, she works at the intersection of technology, policy, governance, and investment. Marit is a geologist by training, has extensive experience building international partnerships and advising governments and industry on the frameworks needed to accelerate geothermal development, and her current work focuses particularly on how stronger governance, policy design, and international cooperation can enable geothermal, including next generation technologies. And very much look forward to your remarks, Marit.
Thank you, Ron, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, the entire team of organizers, for having the International Geothermal Association with you today, and congrats on this initiative. I'm very excited to see it through, and this is the first I heard of the many, I hope, for GeoFutures. Thanks, Ron, as well for the brief introduction. It's always cool to hear your own introduction. You think, oh, really? Is this me? But thanks for that. So I will not dwell further on myself, but definitely a little bit on IG. So next slide, please. Because I'm quite keen to sort of get the grasp of what we do at IGA, and also very keen to seek alliances, to seek the partnerships with all the other great initiatives around the world that is there and that are there to help advance geothermal energy. Now, small disclaimer, might take more and more in the decades of learning within geothermal energy, but actually with all the subsurface technologies, is that yes, as a subsurface professional, we tend to think the subsurface solves everything. But my take, and I think that's also my main message for today's presentation, is that we need to carefully shape what happens above ground in terms of our deployment strategies. and especially for geothermal, and hopefully as well for next gen geothermal, we are going to look bigger, better, and brighter to what's happening above ground. And with above ground, we're going to talk about that in the coming 10 minutes. First of all, IGA, we have one flagship, and that's the World Geothermal Congresses. Every 3 years, we organize them across the world. That is our biggest opportunity to meet, greet, and set targets and discuss where we stand and where we would like to go across the 110 countries these days that have an activity, whether small or big, but have an activity in geothermal energy. In 26, we have held World Geothermal Congress in Calgary, Canada. Very pleased to hear that they are part of your SAM initiative because I think it's going to be a booming market in the coming decade. The other flagship that we do, and that is all to do with World Geothermal Congress, is to collect the data. And we don't do that alone. We do that with all our partners across those 110 countries. And they deliver their country reports. Alongside the country reports are the data, clearly illustrated as well now by Japan and by Kenya. Thank you both for your outstanding presentations on what the countries are doing. And what we do at World Geothermal Congress is have those country updates as well. And then ultimately we collect them all and we present to the world the updates for both power and the direct utilization. Now the red dots on the top diagram illustrates the growth for geothermal energy when it comes in down to our power markets. And the bottom figure is the direct utilization of geothermal energy. Now, I am a very optimistic person. However, I'm always a little bit tempted to be a bit more, let's say, negative about electricity when it comes down to showing those figures, as we are often dubbed as being a, let's say, a flatliner. We have grown, of course, geothermal energy to power. We have grown. We stand now at 17.1 gigawatt electric across the world, almost in 33 countries. And that's not bad. That's actually pretty good. But it took us a long time. I'll come to that. The direct utilization, basically the heating and cooling or the direct use of the heat, as quite nicely demonstrated what Kenya is doing as well with the dairy, or for instance swimming, the bathhouses. That seems to be growing actually quite extensively. However, the focus of today is on electricity markets, next gen to power, and I quite like to stick around with that, and hence also for our audience to deliberate maybe in the panel, how can we optimize above ground the frameworks needed in order to get off our, let's say, our flatliner, and indeed build those projects that will deliver on the many gigawatts that the countries have said that they are going to do. And I think that's very brave of them to put a number against the potential. Next slide, please. Because the potential is something that us geothermalists talk about a lot. We talk a lot about the enormous potential of geothermal energy, and I am no stranger to that either. I do like to see those numbers. 800 gigawatt by 2050, it does sound great, right? The average wind farm those days actually the actual gigawatts that the wind farms are producing nowadays in combination with solar energy as well is already on that number. It produces 800 to 900 gigawatts on a yearly basis, and our 17 gigawatt is just very small compared to what the other renewable energies industries are doing. And that calls for us to systemically, let's say, reflect, but also to determine what's causing us in a systemic gap, basically not to deploy according to our potential. Now, this diagram is based on all the data over the past 8 World Geothermal Congresses. So this is basically 35 years of existence of the geothermal community collecting data. And it basically maps out for all markets, electricity, direct use in all its aspects and categories, what the potential that the countries have set, and the deployment rate according to the gigawatts or megawatts or kilowatts that have been deployed. And there is a gap, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't think we should ignore it, because only when we acknowledge that we have a gap between what we report in terms of potential and what we see happening on the ground is where we can really become better. And in that sense, when you do look across those markets, something comes absolutely clear that when we talk about potential, it doesn't automatically become geothermal deployment. Next slide, please. So basically, something has to connect the two. And maybe it's not just something, maybe it is also someone. Because, and this is important, I expect even more so now that we're talking about next generation geothermal, because the geothermal industry basically started with asking themselves one big question per country, per region, maybe even per community. What do we have beneath our feet, right? Do we have a natural occurring geothermal resource? And if the answer to that was a yes, and that's probably the years of the 1970s to 1990s, where that question was quite pivotal for certain countries, where they could adopt to learning from other countries and on their geothermal curve, and hence the installment of many power plants across the world, especially Ring of Fire, in those 70s to 90s. Where do we have a natural occurring geothermal resource, and what can we do with it? And that obviously is, of course, great. And it has resulted in 17.1 gigawatt electric. So nothing wrong there. However, the change in the conversation, and I guess the change in the policy landscape, and as equally important, someone touched upon this as well, is the financing landscape. The question should not just be, where do we have a resource? And NextGen makes it possible to ask the question, where can geothermal create value in the entire energy system? And of course, here we talk more about power than the direct utilization, appreciating that. But it's still a profound shift in how countries, how governments, how regions, even when it's interconnecting grids, where do we create as geothermal the biggest value? Next slide, please. And that is a different conversation than, for instance, in the 1908, when Larderello in Italy started with the observation that there was steam on the ground. And yes, we do have an industry that is quite significantly old, if I may say so. I mean, we're already 100 to 120 years in existence. We will celebrate in a couple of years our 120th anniversary. And of course, it's phenomenal, and all my respect and appreciation to, for instance, Fervo taking off on the knowledge base created by Forge, and seeing this fantastic IPO. And I bet we will see more of that in the coming decade, especially in the US. However, it took us quite a bit of time, right? It's 120 years in the making, but it tells you that technology is not at a standstill. It tells you that technology is always trying to innovate, always trying to do it better, making more money out of the megawatts that we have available. And that is wonderful. And I really appreciate those potential forecasts of 800 gigawatt. Again, I am not against those forecasts. However, to turn forecasts and potential, let's say, statements on where we could be into reality, that's going to be the biggest trick. Next slide, please. And I guess the real statement that I would really like to debate a little bit on, maybe also in the panel, is that technology seems to be moving faster than governance. And technology, as we could see now, over the past 10, 15 years, getting into R&D with Forge and having Fervo IPOing this year is clearly wonderful. And it tells you how fast technology can move once it hits the commercialization curve. However, the institutions around it, the permitting, the risk appetite versus the risk envelope around these kind of projects, they may be very suited for specific regions where there is already a thirst and an appetite for risk awareness. However, in other parts of the world, it's probably going to be a little bit more tricky to get those risk envelopes happily seated in those institutions. And hence the bottleneck, in my humble opinion, across the world, is probably not technology alone. It is this interconnection between the humans and hence the governance side of geothermal above ground. Next slide, please. And hence another point clearly demonstrated, and it's so nice to see Kenya, for instance, now also hosting World Geothermal Congress in 2029. Again, congratulations to Kenya on that. The different pathways to commercialization and also the different pathways to the markets that are being created is super interesting to see that per region or per country even. And hence, let's say the message I would like to give also maybe to our collaborative efforts in the coming decade to come is that let's also map out how countries have done it. For instance, resource-led, it's very clear that, for instance, Kenya, Indonesia, Iceland, they look at the resource and they want to develop it, and they've done that. Ultimately, what I see in the US is a complete different mindset now. Maybe not a few years ago, but now the mindset is let's do technology. Let's lead by example through technology. And that's wonderful because let's be honest, you're leading when it comes down to the closed loop, AGS, EGS. This is where the Northern American space is amazingly good at. How to deploy that further within country, but also outside country, that's next level. Also next generation institutional governance that will come, let's say, very important. And ultimately, there are two approaches. And whether we talk about next gen power or next gen for heating and cooling markets, China and the EU, they're leading when it comes down to heating and cooling. And why? Because they target it from a system approach. They need to let's say, get out of emissions. Fossil fuel-based emissions are predominantly for the heating sector, and hence you search for alternatives and you come to geothermal. And hence that system approach and prioritization of geothermal, the power market could also learn from that to basically create a market strategy around where your systems matter and hence building agnostically the technical solutions needed. Next slide, please. And hence, it's super interesting if you look at from an international cooperation point of view. And here, I think we can all hold hands and collaborate effectively together at our key events and at our in-between webinars. We need to share. We need to share our, let's say, our technologies, our lessons learned, what works, what doesn't. But equally important to appreciate that there is not one geothermal model that fits all. Regulation, the right policies and the incentives that are needed in order to make the de-risking of geothermal, especially at its early stage, possible, are the key barriers that we need to overcome. And we can only do that from country to country when we do that together and when we learn from what happens and what does not really happen naturally. And hence there are basically three areas that I always see in whatever country I'm coming, that I always see that is revolving around what could, let's say, help to mitigate those early stage barriers. And it's all about comparable data. It's all about appreciating that we talk in the same language, basically the standardization of that. It's equally important that you have human beings who are very astute in the geothermal world, in the governments, because geothermal is an interesting beast. And if you're not from the subsurface entity and you're more into utilities, you don't appreciate sometimes the risk envelopes around our subsurface to make it happen above ground. And equally important, the market. There needs to be a market, and that market isn't there from one day to another. And hence the connection between developers, investors, financiers, de-riskers, whether that's government or whether that's non-government, super important to align that in whatever stage you are and for whatever market you're doing. Next slide, please. And that means that, and this is again my hint to Kenya in the coming 3 years, I am convinced that next-gen geothermal tech is here to stay. It is doing the job, it has proven, it's commercial, there is an IPO, and there are many other sites around the world where the test beds are being launched. But equally important, as technology probably travels faster than good governance, super important that we also create something like next-gen institutional awareness. Kenya is 29. We have our eye on the African continent as a whole. Kenya as a convening country, and of course, KenGen and GDC, you are going to be our main partners together with GAC, the Geothermal Association of Kenya. And what we have seen towards Canada is we need to come together with a clear mindset of where we can add value in the entire energy system. And I think with SAM, with the DOE, with NREL, we all have partners across the world where we can say to each other, look, if the 88 or the 800 gigawatt by 2050 and the 88 per country XYZ is going to be a real deployment target, let's incentivize the market, let's bring in the investors, and let's create the right regulatory mindsets and paperwork in order to get that done. Basically, the next-gen institutional powers need to be there in 2029. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Marie. Really appreciate your leadership activities globally, as you've highlighted, and your focus on next generation institutions, and as you say, that the governance and above ground solutions that we all need to tackle to advance next generation geothermal energy globally. So, and we look forward to working together with you on those challenges. We're now going to take a few minutes for questions, and we're a bit short on time, so I'll ask panelists to try and respond in 1 to 2 minutes. So starting with Sean, I'd like to ask you a sort of two-part question. How is the U.S. balancing continued investment in conventional geothermal with emerging next generation geothermal technologies and national planning? And where do you see the greatest opportunity for next generation geothermal, building on projects like Forge to change the trajectory of national energy strategies?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. And I want to speak to the balancing angle. I think I talked to the NOFO earlier, right? That's $171.5 million for exploration of all geothermal resources and development of those resources. So it's going to benefit hydrothermal developers. It's also going to very much develop and benefit the EGS side of the house too. So for us in the United States, it's not an either or characterization here. We're really looking for all electrons from geothermal power. And much of our R&D supports that approach. You know, drilling advancements in one basin can cross-pollinate and develop opportunities in other basins for other types of geothermal power. So we do see that work being useful for both technologies and also all of our exploration work, right? We're looking to lower the exploration risk across all of our power sector work. And by instituting ways for next generation exploration techniques and then making that data freely available, we invite commercial industries and developers across the power spectrum to be then using that data to help explore and characterize their own opportunities. So at the end of the day, it's about the electrons, and we're supporting both the hydrothermal and the EGS space. Your second question, next generation geothermal, where do we see kind of the next stage beyond Forge? Forge, as I said, is a standard bearer here, right? We've done a lot of first of a kind work there, but we know the job's not done. The data information that we have is available right now for those looking for long-term planning in a given jurisdiction that doesn't have a Forge type site right now. So there's a lot of learning by doing we've done at Forge that is certainly beneficial for anybody thinking about a similar type of demonstration and test site activity in their given space. But really, I'd say what we're really excited about is the fact that results from these demonstrations help us better understand the drilling and stimulation across varied geologies. Forge is but one location. The pilots and demos NOFO is going to unlock more of those locations. We suspect we need, up to 10 types of lithology developments here in the United States before we really reach that commercial stage where traditional capital is coming in earlier and earlier with debt. And we are lowering that risk register. And I saw the risk development curve earlier in one of the other presentations. We want to get traditional debt and financing earlier and earlier into these processes. So again, it isn't about meeting other technologies where they're at in terms of their own risk registers. It's about making sure everybody on the financing side understands what we are doing to advance and lower and improve our ability to develop these resources here in the U.S.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, and I think we're all very excited and looking forward to the scale up of these demonstrations and opening up of capital mobilization for next generation technologies that will enable. Haruki, I'd like to ask you, what do you feel are the biggest barriers Japan has faced in incorporating geothermal, especially next generation, into your energy strategies, and what types of technical assistance and collaboration can help overcome these barriers?
Thank you. I think in Japan, geothermal energy is categorized as renewable energy source, but unlike solar or wind power, geothermal projects involve significant drilling and subsurface risks. Because developers cannot fully understand underground conditions before drilling, reducing this uncertainty is one of the key challenges. Therefore, from my perspective, one of the most valuable forms of technical assistance is the provision of high-quality geological and resource data. In Japan, geological surveys conducted by NEDO, New Energy and Industry Technology Development Organization, have been very helpful for developers in identifying promising sites and reducing development risks. However, many of these surveys were conducted decades ago. Some datasets are becoming outdated, and many of the promising areas identified by those surveys have already been extensively investigated. Therefore, I believe it is important to continue updating geological information and conducting new surveys. This is also important for next-gen geothermal technologies. While technologies such as EGS and closed-loop systems are expected to expand the range of suitable development areas, they cannot be deployed everywhere. Good geological data will remain essential for identifying attractive sites and supporting investment decisions. In short, better data helps reduce risks, and lower risks helps accelerate geothermal development, I think. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Haruki. And we could not agree more with the vital importance of current, accurate, comprehensive resource data and characterization. So, George, I'd like to turn to you and as an established geothermal producer, what lessons can we learn from Kenya's experience that are especially helpful for countries that are in earlier stages of their geothermal energy development and journey? You're on mute, George.
Thank you very much, Ron. I think one of the most important lessons that I think we have here in Kenya is that it is absolutely important for those countries that are looking to move into geothermal development to have an institution similar to GDC, an institution that has a sole purpose of geothermal development. Like I said, our mandate is really to fast track geothermal development. And while we are looking at geothermal development holistically, we are not looking to play the whole role of this development. We just want to remove those bottlenecks that would exist for the private sector to be able to come in to develop the power plants. So this is a role that GDC has taken up honestly, and I think even from just my presentation, we've been able to demonstrate that that kind of approach can really fast track geothermal development. The other point that I think is really, really critical is the regulatory framework. I was listening to Ms. Broma speak, and I think I was first of all, about her presentation, I wish I had put the Geothermal Congress 2029, but yes, anyway. So I think the regulatory framework is really, really important. It needs to be able, geothermal developers need to be able to know how that development is going to pan out in terms of from a regulatory perspective. For instance, here in Kenya, we do development in two different ways. There's a public sector, and also there's a private sector that takes up geothermal fields. So those private sector players who are developing green fields, it needs to be predictable that how long they will take in terms of exploration, how much time they have to do their appraisal drilling, etc., etc. So that predictability, I think, is really important in fast tracking geothermal development. And finally, I think in as much as we're talking about next generation technologies, the direct use aspect, I think, is really important, especially for us here in Africa. Those high enthalpy fields are only in the eastern arm of the Rift Valley. The western arm might not have as fields that have high enthalpies. So it's really important for us, at least in Africa, to be cognizant of the fact that direct use is also quite critical in terms of moving forward the energy aspirations of a country, and see how we can tap into the geothermal development, into the geothermal resources in those countries. I think I'll leave it at that point, Ron, and over back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, George. And yeah, thank you for highlighting the critical role of GDC type institutions and removing barriers to enable private investment along with the direct use opportunity. And Marit, I'd like to ask you to reflect on some of the more significant outcomes of and examples of international collaboration highlighted at this year's World Geothermal Congress, and what lessons can apply to us going forward.
Excellent, and also yeah, George, we should have put a banner up for WDC 29, but I did mention it, so this is now the eyes are now on Africa, and indeed, I mean, part of the discussions, and I think that's the biggest lessons learned for Canada, because they have no geothermal yet on the map. By convening the world into their country, into the city, this was in Calgary, in Alberta, you do put yourself in the spotlight, right? So we had the governor of Alberta coming and opening the Congress, and as a result, you never know if that's a direct result or whether she comes and she speaks and then there is a result. There's a lot of political momentum, and that has created another big funding for creating a national roadmap for geothermal energy. If we would not have convened a World Geothermal Congress in Canada, it is more difficult to get that attention from the political powers to be. And hence, I guess one of the biggest lessons learned, and we have seen it throughout all the World Geothermal Congresses that have been, let's say, held in respective countries. Japan is one of them, one of the earliest in the early 2000s. Italy was the first. Turkey, now with 1.2 gigawatt online, had nothing when we convened. 10 years later, they had 1.2 gigawatt. So the hopes are high, of course, for Canada, but one of the biggest lessons beyond, let's say, convening and putting the spotlight on the map and hence on the city or in the region is the Northern American space. I mean, the fact that in 26 we chose Canada. It is of course neighboring the Americas, and hence the focus on technology, on drilling excellence, and going into, let's say, previously not so well known areas, as in the super hot rock and in the dry rock, basically the EGS scope. Having ever alongside as one of our key sponsors, basically put the spotlight on closed loop technologies. And that has been a very good topic of international cooperation, collaboration, partnership, creation. And I really hope, and of course, this is something that I think we all care for deeply, is to turn the conversations into reality. And hence the targets are important, the conversations remain important, but ultimately proof is in the pudding. And in our pudding, it means projects. So we need to see the projects, EGS, AGS, super hot in the coming decade coming into reality.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Marie. Yeah, I could not agree more. It's all about getting these projects, building the capacity, building the knowledge, improving our resource characterization, as well as Haruki identified, and working on governance issues. And we'll need to close there. This has been an outstanding set of presentations and remarks. Huge thank you to Jean-Francois, to Sean, to Haruki, to George, to Marit. And thank you so much to all of our panelists and to our participants in joining us. Please join us on September 29th for our next webinar on policy and regulatory conditions, and reach out to the GeoFutures Initiative. Let us know how we can be of assistance, how we can share information, opportunities for technical assistance as well, and look for our case study series that we'll be releasing at SEM 17. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your days, and we look forward to working together on this journey of geothermal scale up.